Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the podcast. Now you may have noticed that I invite an expert in their field to give us all the benefit of their knowledge in my series of podcasts. So far this year, I've been fortunate enough to speak to experts in crypto, cybersecurity. By the way, the cybersecurity, we're going to be doing another one because there's something going on at the moment, I think. And then negotiation, compliance as well, to give us their informed opinion in their specialist fields. And today we are very fortunate to have Carla Hoppe, founder of Wealthbrite, on the podcast. So hello, Carla, and please could you introduce yourself?
Hi, Peter. Yes, thanks so much for having me. Great to be here. For people who don't know me, you've already mentioned I'm the founder of Wealthbrite. We're the only independent legal financial education experts. And what that means is that we work directly with people in the legal sector to help them upskill in learning how to manage their personal finances. So I bet there are folks who are listening or perhaps watching who are thinking, gosh, yeah, I wish I'd learned more about taxes rather than trigonometry at school. And we're there plugging that gap, helping people, particularly at the start of their career, figure out, what are the money moves that you could be making now to make financial life and general life a heck of a lot easier later down the line.
No, it's brilliant. I think that it's so needed, and I think that it's a great thing that you're doing, and it will set people up for the rest of their life, really. So, and get them into good habits and things. So, my wife's constantly telling me about this as well because she's a financial advisor. So,
Great.
Yeah. Anyway,
You've got
right.
the inside track.
Well, I don't know about that. That'd be too much talking shop, really. But anyway, so regular followers of this podcast hopefully know by now that after 900 odd episodes, that I'm all about commercial awareness, which itself is all about understanding financial markets, business environment, and how it relates to you. However, today we're going to take a look at how economic and geopolitical developments affect your finances. So if we were to take a snapshot of where we are at the moment, consumer confidence is low, living costs are rising, the housing market is strong. What should listeners or viewers of this podcast look out for in the first instance?
Yeah, so Peter, I guess when I think about, how do I connect the dots between what's going on out there in the economy and what does it actually mean for me and my money? This is the connection between what people might know as macroeconomics, and then it's all about kind of translating that into the microeconomics of our personal household budgets, right? And I guess I'm gonna encourage people to center around three key concepts over the course of this conversation. So one is inflation. What does inflation do to our kind of experience as consumers? And we can talk a little bit about how interest rates move often in times of inflation and what that means for people depending on kind of how they're using their money. And then the second one I think about is this concept of growth in our economy. So folks here in the UK will know very well that the Labour government in power at the moment has a real agenda around growth. And unfortunately for them, the mood music is not going in their favour, particularly with everything that's happened due to the Trump tariffs actions, right? So we're going to look about what does growth mean? How does it benefit us as individuals, whether that's around kind of putting more money into the economy that can help fund big ticket items like infrastructure, like housing, like jobs. And that ultimately all does trickle down, right? And it helps to make our lives easier and more cost effective. And then the last one, I guess, is when you're thinking about market movements, what we're seeing in the stock market. Is thinking you might be tempted to say, oh, I feel really up to date with what's going on because I'm regularly listening to Watson's Daily or I'm watching the news. But you might kind of be someone who's thinking, well, I feel informed, but it's not really something that I need to worry about on an individual level. And, actually, whilst you probably don't want to get super obsessed with it and start trying to track things day to day, it's a good thing to be aware that actually you as an individual are impacted, and you're primarily impacted through the impact of market movements on things like your pension. And of course, if you're listening and you're in full-time employment over the age of 22 and earning more than £10,000, you will have been auto-enrolled into a pension by your employer, which means you're actively investing in the stock market, because your pension is just a wrapper, a very tax-efficient wrapper for investments that fund your long-term financial future. So actually, when we do start to see market movements, it will have an impact on your pension. But as I say, no need to mass panic, because if you're investing for a pension, that means you're investing over a very long-term horizon. And whilst, yes, we are seeing some downward moves right now, I think it's fair to say, and Peter, you probably have a lot more to share on this, but actually, in general terms, the cyclical history that is the stock market has shown that time and time again, investing in the stock market outstrips your kind of reward, what you get back at the end of it, than simply, stuffing it under your bed or sticking it in a cash savings account. So actually, when we're holding for the long term, we have to try not to panic in times like today.
That's right, absolutely. And I think that I think that even though there are people obviously that know things like this, and it is often said, and with the long term, over the 20-year period, 25-year period, it always outperforms. That doesn't stop people from panicking, though.
Absolutely not.
I know that financial advisors are getting panic phone calls from people saying, "What's going on? Why is my value of my investments going down? It's so what am I doing?" Being a lot of people trying to take their money out as well. So it's very it's very difficult. One thing I would also say though is that what often tends to happen is everything kind of goes wrong at the same time, in the sense that you will feel you might think, that my food shop is getting too expensive, and the price of my annual holiday is going up. So I think I need a bit more money, or when maybe I'll sell a bit of my my portfolio, and then you look at your portfolio and you think, well, it's gone down. So so the fact that you need the money is usually at the time when when the valuation has gone down, and it all seems to happen at the same time. So that's certainly worth bearing in mind, because I know that a lot of people do panic at times like this.
The other thing I would just add on to that, thinking specifically about pensions, yes, people probably have heard that spiel about holding long and not panicking, but a couple of data points to share with you that might kind of prick people's ears. We annually survey people in the legal profession about how they feel and deal with money. One of the questions we regularly ask is, are you currently an investor? The first year we did that, over 70% of people said no or don't know to the question, which suggests to me that they didn't realize that their pension is an investment. So that statistic did drop. It was still over 50% in year 2 when we ran that survey. But it still demonstrates to me a lack of awareness and understanding about how pensions actually operate. So if you're someone who's perhaps listening to this and thinking, yeah, I've heard all this before, my challenge back to you would be, do you know where your pension is actually invested? I think something that people aren't always familiar about when it comes to pensions is that actually you do have some control over what your pension is invested in. Very few people bother, apart from that annual, benefits renewal cycle, to check in on their pension and what their pension is actually invested in. So whilst I wouldn't encourage anybody to start opting out of pensions or start trying to play trader with their pension, I think actually this is a kind of a moment where actually we might be sparking some awareness in people, and it might be a good opportunity for them to do one of two things: check in to kind of better understand their pension if they've never done that. Or two, if you're someone who's actually moved around in a number of jobs and been promising yourself to consolidate your pensions or even track them, then definitely worthwhile heading over to, for interest for people, the government has a really handy pension tracker tool. So it might be a good opportunity to go and find out where all your little pots of money are sitting right now.
Mm. I think that's that's a very good idea, and it's something that people don't tend to. You kind of think, oh well, I've got pensions, so I'm okay. So you leave it at that and move on. I think, but I think it's
Yeah.
a really good thing to actually understand what that is.
Hmm.
So going back to the point about, you made a point about market movements.
Yeah.
Obviously, markets have been very volatile, and that's pretty much been due to the combination of Trump's tariffs and the fact that he tends to be changing his mind quite a lot at the moment.
Yeah.
So, do you see any kind of actual? There's always winners and losers. There's always winners and losers,
Hmm.
and you can there's a lot of losers around at the
Yeah.
moment. There's a lot of downside at the moment. But
Yeah.
do you think that there might be any benefits for the UK at all from Trump's actions?
Yeah, well, look, I think the reality is that everywhere is reporting a downturn, right?
Mm,
And so we've seen that this week in the US. The US economy has shrunk in the last quarter. The
mm,
UK economy forecast for growth has been revised down.
mm,
So I think in the immediate term, it's probably, yeah, very much does feel like to folks that actually I'm kind of getting hammered from all angles, right?
mm,
But I do still think that there could be spaces or places where, in the medium term, potentially slightly longer term, depending
mm,
on the political environment,
mm,
we could start to see some shifts that could ultimately benefit the individual. So where might those happen? We mentioned already the impact of inflation and how inflation and interest rates kind of go together, right? So what does that actually mean in practice? Well, there are signs that inflation is rising.
mhm,
I know there was reports this week about food inflation being up again. Food
mm,
prices keep rising. I know if you're anything like me, I'm consistently horrified at how much more I'm spending every week for very little, or it seems like I'm getting a lot less for the same amount of money. And even when I think I'm buying the same things, I swear every little thing that I'm buying has shrunk inside its packaging.
mm,
So I'm definitely seeing that in real time, right? Um, if inflation starts to rise, the Bank of England may look to cut interest rates as an anti-inflationary measure, right?
mm,
Because inflation, obviously, we start to feel the pinch. The natural consumer behavior or the reaction for most people is to go, oh, everything's really expensive. I'm just going to huddle down. I'm
mm,
just going to keep my money. I'm going to spend less. And actually, the weird thing of it is that can compound inflation and actually start to actually assist the kind of economic effect. So a cut in interest rates may happen. And of course, a cut in interest rates is great news if you're a mortgage or a homeowner, right?
mm,
Because your mortgage may reduce in terms of how much you're actually having to pay,
mm,
particularly if you're on a tracker mortgage. Less good news if you're a saver, because obviously banks will look at the interest rate that's in play when they assess how much interest they're going to apply to your savings rates. But certainly a cut in interest rates will help anybody who has some form of lending. So that's one area where there might be some opportunity for a glimmer of hope.
mm,
I guess the second area, and this is probably longer term, is about sort of the opportunity that the UK has in light of Trump's tariffs to
mhm,
look to make trade deals with other partners. So whether that's getting closer to the EU, whether that's with other third parties, you'll know, Peter, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this. Like those trade deals take time to
mm,
close. They are not straightforward, despite what Trump would tell people. You can't do these deals in a day.
mm,
So they will take longer to shake out, but the impact of those types of deals may be that we see more cheaper goods essentially in the UK, and cheaper goods means lower prices. It means more competition, means lower prices for people, right?
mm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. So I mean, just in reply to the points you made, so I was sort of
Yeah.
writing while you were doing this. So first of all, on interest rates, it looks very highly likely that these are going to come down.
Yeah.
I think it was UBS that said they reckon that there's going to be 0.25 percentage point rate cuts at every meeting for the next 5 meetings.
Mm.
So I think they said, I think it was something like 3.25% by the end of the year. As you quite rightly said, one of the things that this is one of the things that the central bank can do. This is one of the levers that it can pull, is to try to stimulate the economy. Because one of the a simplistic way of looking at it is the fact that if you've got lower, if the cost of borrowing is lower, that means that you're more likely to borrow and therefore spend. So that's why that's why everyone goes on about that. So yes, it looks highly likely that there is going to be there are going to be cuts. In terms of you said it was something on
Trade
mortgages.
deals.
Oh, well,
Mortgage rates coming down.
yeah,
Yeah.
so mortgage rates coming down. So again, that goes hand in hand with interest rates. So if you get the central bank, so the central bank will reduce their interest rates. And by the way, just for fun, the thing is there are loads of different interest rates, right? So everyone thinks when you see the news and things, you think, okay, there's one interest rate there. They're not. There are loads, and they've got all incredibly long names. But anyway, just to warn you, if you ever do look at this sort of thing, to look into it. But anyway, those interest rates do have, the mortgage lenders. So like your, Lloyd's or Halifax or Nationwide, whatever, they will also use those rates, and they will cut their mortgage rates. Because the thing is, if they leave their mortgage rates high, they're not going to get much business. But then again, you see, they do it so that if they want to attract a certain type of borrower, then they will. So you'll have to say put down a 40% deposit, you'll get a really good rate. But that's not what not what most people do. But anyway, so that's why I just thought I'd make that point with regard to mortgages. They move with the central bank. And then the tariffs thing with Trump. The thing is, normally, I would say that you are absolutely right, because they take ages. All these free trade agreements, even if they're bilateral, so between two countries, they do take a long time. For instance, we have been in negotiation with India for a long time, for instance. And the only reason why that's accelerating is because of all the carnage that's going on at the moment. So that's actually accelerating the process. The only thing I would say is maybe this time is a bit of an exception, because Trump has created so much chaos with the way that he's done it, so across the board and so dramatically. I would have thought that there's going to be more likelihood of a faster deal, because people have seen what the worst case scenario might look like. So
I think you're right. I think people will be
be
motivated to mobilize,
Yeah.
and surprising things happen in moments of political stress, right?
Yeah.
So, certainly I can see, it wasn't that long ago that pre-Trump's inauguration that we were talking about, how poorly the United Nations, the EU countries were getting on, right? And all of a sudden, Trump's come along, and actually the EU, for the most part, the 27 member states seem to be playing ball pretty well, right? So, I think definitely this is driving behaviors that maybe we haven't seen as much of prior to that. And it might mean that quicker deals are done. And in the meantime, even before those deals are done, we might start to see an influx of products that would have gone to the US coming here instead. So one great example of that, I don't know if I'm sure you saw the news because you're all over the news, But Trump has closed the loophole on tariffs from China. So this loophole was a de minimis rule, which meant if you were sending products with a value of less than $800, you didn't actually have to pay any customs. Now, that obviously hugely benefited consumer product brands, particularly those like Shein. And now they will be subject to those customs, or tariffs. Custom charges, I should say. Now, of course, it won't mean that they'll stop sending stuff to the US. US consumers will have to pay more, but you can start to see why they might start to turn their attention to other countries where they're not having to pay as high a rate in taxation on the way through, right? So it might start to change behaviors of companies who want to take advantage of the kind of lower tariff environment through other countries, and that might include the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I think there's a lot of pressure for the government to close its own de minimis rule as well. And, you know, we are seeing already the effect of this. So I think that Temu and Shein have already put their prices up in anticipation in the US. They've also, I think that they shifted loads of stuff over in anticipation of this, so they'll have a bit of a buffer. And the other thing as well, which I thought was really interesting today, is Shein did not renew the contract with their 2 PR agencies that they employed ahead of the IPO. So that would imply that they're not going to do an IPO here, or at the very least, it's going to be postponed.
Interesting.
But there's a whole kind of wider thing of being flooded with products that would have gone to America and coming over here. And I think in particular, manufacturers are very wary of this happening. And I would have thought that British Steel in particular is going to be very worried about this. So, yeah. But
and I suppose that, coming back to why we're chatting is like, what does the consumer or the individual, why did they care about this stuff?
Yeah.
And I suppose this is where actually there's a bit of tension in the system, right? Because on the one hand, as a consumer, we love to get a bargain. We love things to be cheap, right? So we like to feel we've got a good deal.
Yeah.
I think there is a growing movement of people who recognize the issues around sustainability of some of those business models and the impact on the environment. But I think there's always a tension between our purse strings and how far will that monthly paycheck go to get us the things that we want or need, depending on our circumstances. And of course, clothing is one of those items that, we all need. Where we choose to get them will depend on our financial circumstances. And I think there will be a growing tension between the drive to attract customers who maybe don't have a lot to spend but are still looking for products, and those of us who are prepared to pay a bit more for a more sustainable, eco-friendly kind of consumer environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, there's so much stuff to think about here, and I think that I believe we are really just scraping the surface of what is going on, but I just want to emphasize that it is, all of this is going on around us at all times, and I think if you remain switched on to it and react, actually you're probably going to do better than most people, because most people do not take that much notice, and they kind of cross their fingers and hope for the best, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that by taking an interest in this stuff and then translating it into your own personal circumstances would help you to make better or at least more informed choices about what you decide to do.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, is there anything that you would like to, any other points you'd like to make?
Yeah, I suppose I think I completely agree with what you've just said. Actually, you've kind of what you just said now about helping people make more informed decisions, that's a big part of our mantra at Wealthbrite. So I mentioned at the start of this, we're independent, so we're not regulated. We don't do regulated advice. We're here as financial educators only. So we can educate on the facts, the issues of the day. We can point people towards information and useful resources, but we don't tell you what to do with your money. Okay. And we don't handle it directly ourselves. But I think, this point about awareness is a really powerful one. I think this is a moment where many people are waking up to the financial issues of the day. And, I think sometimes rather unfairly, when we hear about politics and elections, we often hear about the youth vote doesn't show up, right? And there's this sense of apathy in the system, and apathy leading to inaction, and I've seen this in our work at Wealthbrite, an attitude around personal finances in young people, which is almost like, well, the world is on a highway to Doomsville, so what is the point in me even trying, right? And I understand that on a human level. I understand the kind of like effort culture. Like I might as well just enjoy it. I'll enjoy myself today and, spend my money doing the things that bring me immediate joy. But at the same time, I think, it's kind of incumbent upon folks like ourselves to kind of spotlight why thinking long-term, thinking bigger picture, and being able to apply it to your personal circumstances is so important, because, reality is we're all living a heck of a lot longer. And we can't all afford to live as long as we're going to live. So, that's part of my mission, is to help people kind of do exactly what we're doing here, connect the dots between what's going on out there and what it means for you as an individual.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's brilliant, and it's fun enough that it's like me with commercial awareness, because I'm not giving investment advice. I'm not, even despite people saying I should. I don't want to do that. I'm in it for trying to help people to understand what is going on. I want them to understand and try to think what I'm trying to do. It's not just here's a newsletter, this is what's going on, brilliant. I mean, it's great, that's fine. But what I'm actually trying to do is to help you to think in a more proactive way about the world around you, and to translate that what is going on into your own personal circumstances. Whereas it seems to me that what you're doing is you're doing the same thing, but for your actual your personal finances. Whereas
Absolutely.
I'm doing it for your own kind of career development, that sort of thing. That's why I'm doing it. So there we go. So neither of us are giving actual advice. We're not giving actual advice, but we're just trying to point you in the right direction and to help you.
We have a problem in the UK. We have a huge financial education gap, and the reality is that the vast majority of people are not in a financial situation where they can afford to pay for financial advice. They're looking for spaces to learn, to grow. And so I'm all about creating moments in our daily environment, in our popular culture, where people can be trusted towards, genuinely trusted resources like this type of podcast. So yeah, it's all about encouraging people. How can they use this moment as a platform to sort out their finances, which I think we're going to be talking about next week.
Absolutely. So we're going to be coming back for a sequel next week, and I think it's a subject that will be close to many people's hearts. I know I get asked about it all the time. So it's going to be house prices and the housing market. So tune in for next week, and we will. I'll make sure that everyone's aware. But thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And thank you. And we'll be welcome back next week.
It's a real pleasure, Peter. And thanks for having me on. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.